Hi, I'm Dan Kubisky, co-chair of the International Community for the Society of Professional Journalists. And we're very fortunate today. We're going to talk about a victory for press freedom and freedom of expression in Mongolia. With me right now is Duuya Maatar from the Nest Center for Journalism Innovation in Mongolia. Uh, Duuya, could you just tell us about this great victory that just occurred in the past few days?
Thank you so much, Dan. Thanks for having me again, and thanks for being the follower of this event that was developing in Mongolia, and thanks for bringing this issue into the attention of many people. Before I start, I would like to thank SPJ for putting this into the attention for the international community because I personally had a few people forward me the newsletter and congratulate me for even getting a mention in the newsletter, and this was a very strong proof of concept and proof of that what we were saying was probably a problem and people needed to pay attention to. So thank you so much for that. So yes, I would definitely like to frame it as victory because this was an unprecedented issue that happened in Mongolia, and without much casualty, I would say we were able to annul the law that was approved within 48 hours. So what happened is, just to give a short reminder, Mongolia's parliament approved this law, which they called Law to Protect Human Rights on Social Media, which had great potential um, to threaten freedom of expression online, shut down the internet if they wanted to. And it was already passed when we realized what was happening. And the Nest Center for Journalism and Development in Mongolia, along with local CSOs, media organizations, started this campaign against this law to bring what's happening into the attention of the international community and local community. And after almost 2 months after it was approved, the law was finally annulled by parliament. President of Mongolia vetoed the law on January 27th. And as the parliament was during on their spring break when the veto happened, parliament discussed the veto on March 17th. And they have decided to uphold the veto and annul the law. So what's happening is now, as the parliament has annulled the law, they would still like to bring this law back. But as you have probably noticed, the law is called Law on Protecting Human Rights on Social Media. And despite what actually was written in the law, they were strongly advocating that this law will protect human rights, especially children's rights, and protect children from becoming victims of online crimes, like becoming victims of sexual exploitation or online bullying, etc. So they will bring the law back, and they have promised that this will do exactly what they claim to do. So what the law states through content moderation. And Nest Center for Journalism, Innovation and Development in Mongolia was invited by the corresponding ministry, the Ministry of Innovation and Communication, and the Human Rights Committee of Mongolia. We didn't respond to the invitation from the ministry because they were the governing body, and the body who was given the responsibility to um, implement the law when it was active. But we did respond to the meeting request from the Human Rights Committee of Mongolia because they are the middle ground between us and the state. They informed us that they are already working on a position paper that they are going to submit to the parliament. But maybe at the time of us our speaking right now, they have already submitted it. And that position paper will include the Human Rights Committee's position on actually protecting children's and human rights on social media through legal means. So we're keeping close eye on that, and yeah, we'll see what happens.
Well, first, thank you very much for the kind words you said at the beginning of that. Um, the So the step you're taking now is you're just consulting with the Human Rights Committee in terms of making proposal for Parliament to take your ideas into consideration. Is that the situation you're at now then?
Uh, this meeting I told about happened before the veto was upheld at the Parliament. So our position at the time was we will not get into any discussion of making a new law when the previous one is still in effect. So that was our position, but now we are open to discussing like how content is being um, how content is traveling through social media and how maybe people are consuming information, and what are the characteristics of such crimes being, I don't know, such crimes happening, for instance. If a person is losing their private information to a malign actor, potential criminal, and with potential risks to become a victim because he or she lost her or his private information, um, there might be something that we can share in terms of our experience of working on the social media with misinformation. So that is something that we might potentially be able to share, but that conversation hasn't happened yet. So now, if the Human Rights Committee wants to discuss with us, we are open to such discussions. But the previous discussion didn't include such conversation because the the illegal law was still in effect, if I could say
Okay.
that.
Okay. And
Yeah.
let's face it, you mentioned the problem of disinformation. That's really kind of part of your core programming at the Nest Center, is countering misinformation and helping the Mongolian people better understand how to identify disinformation. Uh, was there anything in the law that was annulled and anything in discussions coming up that could have harmed or caused you not to be able to do your job as well of identifying and exposing misinformation or disinformation?
You mean the currently annulled law, that the law that went away?
Right.
Mm. It did have clauses that we had problems with. So there were three different laws that were amended following the approval of this annulled law. So one of them stated kind of had us working for the government, and pretty much working with them to identify misinformation or harmful content. And those harmful contents will be decided by the parliament, the government member, that it's harmful. And if she decided it was harmful, it pretty much dictated that we should remove or moderate that content. So that was one of the core problems that we had. I mean, it can't be implemented, but the fact that it was we even don't have the tools or the capacity to do that, but the fact that it was scribed on paper into that law was something that we had huge problem with. Um, so potentially going forward, um, we will do all in our power. Now that, I mean, I think we are at a place where we can all comfortably discuss how to do this right, and without harming freedom of expression. So, I mean, we do recognize the problem around the social media, disinformation, misinformation, and also harmful contents causing people to become victims of certain crimes. We do recognize and realize that there is certain risk, but what our position is, we do not want to bring a very authoritative legal environment where there could be other less authoritative measures, might be more difficult, but less authoritative measures that could result in better, like making the situation better. For instance, I mean, just carrying out a wide-scale awareness raising campaign and informing people about this, like something that we do on a very small scale every year. If we could maybe make that bigger and make it countrywide and make it in a very inclusive and accessible format, and spread that information instead of making this authoritative change, this will be more accurate and, I mean, more democratic. There have been mentions of victims of online crimes not going to the police because they don't believe the police will help them. Why not improve the police service so that people have more trust in the police authority and they go there instead of just having their contents banned on social media? So there are other less authoritative measures. I mean, things that actually should be happening but not happening. So our position is, why not start there instead of introducing these authoritative measures?
Right. So having a little more flexibility to be able to deal with the situation rather than immediately shutting down the internet or shutting down a website. When the very first time we talked about this issue, there were a couple of, you had raised the issue with other organizations, and I believe Rappler had a story. The Committee to Protect Journalists and Reporters Without Borders had reports. But then later we saw a lot more stories being generated by the BBC, by AFP, and others. Do you see this kind of coalition building with your organization and other internet and international organizations, news organizations, and journalism organizations as a win-win for everybody? Because you get international support and the rest of the world understands better what's going on. Could you just talk about your international work as well then?
Thank you for that question. There were a lot of friends who helped us. I mean, when it first happened, we didn't know what to do, and as I said, we didn't even know if it was something bad or not, because it was so unprecedented. And Rappler helped us bring this information to the attention of the international community as well. Our friends at Pointer Institute and International Fact-Checking Network covered the story as well. We had Society of Professional Journalists, Internet Association of Internet Companies. So we had quite a number of friends who were there to support us, and if not in the format of articles or news stories, in the way of connecting us to new people, in the way of helping us and providing us with guidance and advice on how to do like an advocacy when it comes to authoritative measures and laws being approved. So we're very thankful to our friends in the international community for being there with us, and also trusting our judgment when we came to them and said there might be something wrong with this. So this is, I don't know if it's a win-win for like this broader community, because I truly believe that all of this support was provided to us just because they wanted to help us, not for a benefit or something like that. But when we look at it in a broader scale, I just feel that I haven't looked at the data or compiled any set of information, but what I'm feeling is that we're seeing this increasingly internationally. Governments around the world kind of felt this power during COVID, that how comfortable they are with monitoring information and being the only source of information, and I just feel like they liked how it felt, and they want to continue to do this even after COVID. Because when we told our friends like this is happening in Mongolia, some of them were like, that's what's supposed to happen. Like, everyone's doing this. So the more governments are turning more authoritative, and they are looking at each other and learning from what others are doing. I think we can talk about multiple examples in Southeast Asia, just like Philippines, for instance. It's not just when the authorities want to shut you down, it doesn't matter what the law is called. It could be a law on protecting human rights, or it could be the tax law, right? It could be the criminal code. They can use whatever law they want um, to to make you a criminal. So this is something that we're seeing increasingly, and I think the work that we have done to bring this issue into the attention of the world has shown that even countries that were called the oasis of democracy um, can be doing this. So it could come from anywhere, and it probably just increases the caution around our community.
You mentioned using the tax law, just to point out to people that may not be aware. That's the law that the Philippine government has been using against Rappler and Maria Ressa. So they do, you're right. They'll use any law. A government could use any law they want. So you have this coalition of friends overseas, and we like to think of ourselves at the in the SPJ as friends of the Nest Center. Do you have a similar coalition within Mongolia that you're working with, so that you've got this domestic and international body, that set of bodies that can move when necessary?
Yes, we have. I think I haven't counted the number of like individuals because it's been growing as well. But there are at least four more organizations that have similar operations as well as Nest to support journalism, but from different aspects. And there are individual journalists who have been supporting us with their time, their social media space to amplify our message. So there is definitely like this local community that is working in tandem. And we are also keeping a close eye on the proposed amendments to the criminal code, which would include defamation and libel as crimes. So we are also keeping an eye on how that develops. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot to do. So I don't think we will run out of problems to work with, and we're still building like this coalition as well, and trying to make it stronger. But I have to be fair, the local community has less room to work with because we are subject to the laws and regulations in Mongolia, whereas the support we get from our international friends, international community can work without being subject to any regulations or any attempt of censorship from inside. So yeah, I mean, we're just looking into both and shamelessly asking our friends to help when the problems arise.
Right. You mentioned the defamation and libel legislation that's coming up. This is a threat around the world. There are many countries criminalizing defamation and libel. I don't want to get into that now with you because you're still discussing that potential legislation. But I do hope you'll keep us informed of what is happening there, because we do have a number of people around the world who are very interested in this issue, and I think this is again a place where we might be able to help you out with some experts that we might know, but also just to make the case more public.
Great, I will do that as we have more information. Um, the problem is we haven't seen the amendment that was proposed
That's a
in
problem, small
writing.
problem.
Yeah. And yeah, we're expecting this might happen during this spring session. So that's another reason to keep us awake. But yeah, it hasn't happened yet, which is a good thing.
Okay. Well, Duuya, thank you very much. I do appreciate you. I mean, it's very early in the morning. You're all dressed and ready for work several hours before you probably have to be in the office. I really appreciate your time. And again, thank you for your time. And congratulations on your
Thank you
success.
so much. Thank you. I hope it continues. And thank you so much for your support, continued support of that, and for letting us use this platform and spread this word to the SPJ community as well.